There is a point on the road, whether approaching from north or south, at which, rounding a corner, travelers catch their first glimpse of the wild and grand mountains, at whose heart lies the hidden capital of the ancient Nabateans. Here, amid extravagant forms of nature, they created some of the most prodigious works of man that were in perfect harmony with their setting. It is the interplay between nature and art, each extraordinary in its own right, that gives Petra its special magic. There is a long, narrow canyon in Petra called the Seek. Passing through it, tourists behold the most iconic structure in the ancient city, the treasury, Al-Khazna, which is actually a mausoleum. It was built at the beginning of the 1st century AD, during the reign of King Aretas IV. If one were to look only at this Neo-Corinthian mausoleum, the Nabateans appear extremely Hellenized, firmly plugged into the broader Greco-Roman, Mediterranean world. We can see the Dioscuri, the twin gods Castor and Pollux, who guided the souls of the dead to the Elysian fields, carved into each side of the lower order. Above them, on the upper order, we can see Amazons wielding axes, beside winged Victories, and above them all, at the top of the facade, a female figure accompanied by motifs associated with the Greek goddess Tyche, as well as the Egyptian goddess Isis. This figure could also be associated with Aphrodite and the Nabatean goddess Al-Uzza. Such cosmopolitan influences recur across Petra's monuments. An amphitheater can be found not far from Al-Khazna, conforming to Vitruvian standards for the design of a Roman theater. Even the figurative art itself found on many of these monuments is a departure from the largely abstract, non-figurative works made by the Nabateans in earlier centuries. Take this relief carving. On the lower order, you can see a rectangular, abstract depiction of the Nabatean god Dushara. On the upper half, a human image of the Greek god Dionysus is carved. One half is traditionally Nabatean, the other is Greco-Roman. There are many distinctly Nabatean designs scattered among the melange of foreign motifs. For example, cultic niches filled with rectangular betyls representing Nabatean deities can be found across the city. And beyond the self-conscious public monuments of Petra, Nabatean houses are scattered haphazardly, ignoring the Greco-Roman penchant for orderly, rectilinear city plans. The residential areas must have resembled a petrified nomads' camp. Even in these houses, though, we can find Mediterranean influences. For instance, Pompeian-style wall murals appear, and many individual houses are laid out in the style of Roman villas. The Nabateans flourished for hundreds of years before Petra was built. Their origins remain mysterious. One theory suggests they were simply the descendants of an earlier people of ancient Jordan, the Edomites. According to another theory, they migrated west from the fringes of Mesopotamia, where ancient Arabic dialects were spoken during the Neo-Assyrian period. Another line of thinking suggests they originated in the northern portion of the Arabian Peninsula. Whatever the case, by the late 4th century BC, they had established themselves in southern Jordan, and over the next several centuries, their trade connections and influence spiderwebbed across the region. The earliest secure historical references to the Nabateans describe a people used to a nomadic, pastoral way of life. Diodorus of Sicily, writing in the 1st century BC but passing on the experiences of Alexander's officer Hieronymus from 312 BC, states that they range over a country which is partly desert and partly waterless. They live in the open air, claiming as native land a wilderness that is neither rivers nor abundant springs. Some of them raise camels, others sheep, pasturing them in the desert. Whenever a strong force of enemies comes near, they take refuge in the desert, using this as a fortress. For it lacks water and cannot be crossed by others, but to them alone, since they have prepared subterranean reservoirs lined with stucco, it furnished safety. Arabia was one of the primary arteries by which the ancient world traded incense, most notably frankincense and myrrh, as well as balsam and laudanum. For millennia, aromatics had flowed across the desert from as far away as India and the southern edge of the Arabian Peninsula to supply the religious rituals of the Akkadians, Assyrians, Babylonians, Phoenicians, Hebrews, Persians, Parthians, Greeks, Romans, and many more. Bitumen was also traded, used for embalming and for waterproofing boats and pottery. To protect their trade routes, the Nabateans built networks of cisterns, wells, and other waterworks, and established garrison forts across the Negev desert, where trade caravans could stop and resupply. For example, at Humeima, water was brought to a series of vaulted cisterns by way of almost 30 kilometers of covered channels drawing water down from springs in the Shara Mountains. At Orhan Mor, the Nabateans established a major stopping point as early as the 3rd century BC. This site, like many, would be co-opted by the Romans when they annexed the region, largely continuing to work through the Nabateans. As traders crossed the Arabian desert, all along the tour they kept paying, at one place for water, at another for fodder, or the charges for lodging at the halts, and the various octroi. Many of the caravansaries and supply depots of the Nabatean trade system have seen little excavation, though these might help us peer into the lives of this people, particularly during the murky early centuries BC. Up in high wadis, there are shrines and petroglyphs across northern Arabia, attesting to the presence of the Nabateans. From the rock art and inscriptions scattered across the Sinai Peninsula, we can see the variety of deities worshipped by them, and the other Arabic-speaking peoples of the region. The traditional Nabatean gods, Dushara, Al-Uzza, and Al-Qutba feature frequently. So do many other gods. Allah, the supreme pre-Islamic god of northern Arabia, features. So do El, Baal, and other Canaanite gods. Yahweh also features in these inscriptions. In fact, many have pointed to the cultural variation we see in Nabatean rock art as an example of the pluralistic nature of their society. These examples demonstrate just how much social diversity existed in the Nabatean realm. Rather than the Nabatean royal god Dushara, a wide array of local traditional deities are attested, from the Haran to the Hijaz. Based on such evidence, researchers characterize the Nabateans as a political framework created by various Arab groups, rather than as its own ethnic category. As their wealth and influence grew, the Nabatean kings had to present themselves and their city as equal partners in the international community, which at the time meant adopting the styles, tastes, and the mores of Western, Hellenistic civilization. The prosperity as an independent kingdom, however, didn't last. In 106 AD, the Romans annexed Nabatea, its territories becoming the newly formed province of Arabia. In some ways, the rise of the Nabatean kings and the construction of Petra seemed like the beginning of the end, not a high point. Rather than understanding the Nabateans through their relationship to the Greco-Roman world, maybe it's better if we don't think of them first for their monuments, kings, and coins. Maybe the heart of Nabatean civilization lies beyond Petra, in the desert.